with Joan and Miguel Milich, and they are from Barrington, Rhode Island. And Joan was involved in the Holocaust, and she's going to talk a little bit about that too. Both of you guys, it's always a pleasure. I love talking to you guys, and it's always a fun conversation. Thanks so much for coming on.
Thank you, Rob.
Thank you.
All right. So first, let's talk about this, Joan. Can you speak about your story and, growing up in a tough time during World War II, and even before the fighting started? You have a unique story, and I'd love for you to tell the viewers about it.
Well, I grew up in Paris until the war broke out, which was not a very pleasant place to be at that time. I remember when the war started and we had air raids, and we used to go down way below in the metro with our gas masks. And to this day, I have a hard time with any kind of mask because they were so big, so ugly. I was so small. That's one of the things. But eventually, my mother was taken away by the Gestapo. My father, he was around, and he tried to hide us, knowing that my mother had been taken and was not sure of where she was or whether she was ever coming back. And it's to this day, I do have a hard time talking about it, because I think that as I get older, it should be to the point where you forget all that happened back in the early 40s.
Right.
But to me, it gets more difficult as I get older. We were taken by my father, who probably was working, or I'm sure he was working with the underground at that time, and they were hiding Jewish children, a lot of children. So my father found a farm in someplace in Normandy, which I could never find because my father, after the war, could not talk about what happened. So there's a lot that I don't know, other than my own experiences. And so we were hidden for quite a while with his family in someplace in Normandy, treated as their children, kindly. They were wonderful to us, and we did whatever the kids got or did. And being Jewish, we went to church, because we never, if anybody came on the farm, we were told that we cannot say, we're Jewish. As a 4-year-old, 5-year-old, maybe 6-year-old at that time, you didn't really think about that. Anyway, so we were treated really well. Somehow, and we stayed there for quite a while, and somehow we went to another farm after, because I think that they were getting word that there was going to be an invasion. And I guess we weren't that far from there, but I don't know. We tried to see it. We tried to look for it when we went to France back with our children back in 2011, I believe. We never did find it or know anything about it. No one knew anything about it. My father passed away. And so I don't know, where we were, other than how kind they were to us. One time, and that I remember this really clearly, a group of soldiers, German soldiers, came on to our farm. And that's when, again, I was told, do not say anything, don't talk to them, don't do anything. One of the German soldiers came over to me, picked me up in his arms when I think everybody was holding their breath, and said to me in French, "I have a daughter that looks like you, and I wonder if I'll ever see it again." So a lot of those soldiers didn't want to be there either, I'm sure. And he put me down. They got their food because that's what they were coming in for, to get it's a farm. We had cows, we had horses, we had ducks and geese and chicken. So that's what happened with these particular soldiers. And when I think that when we went to the other farm, that's when the invasion came in, and we stayed in another farm. My sister and I. My father, who was on that farm, though we never saw him, because he was like a hand on the farm. So we never did see him, but he did take us to this other farm where we stayed until almost the end of the war, or probably at the end of the war. These people that took us in were not as kindly as that first farm. They treated us like we were their, servants. We had to do a lot of work on the farm. So when the war was over, my father then took us to another home, but this home was for Jewish children. And these children had lost a parent, the whole family. They had to have no place else to go. My sister and I had no place else to go because my father, who came out of this alive, had no place to go after the war. He had to find a job. He had to find a place to live. And so he couldn't take care of us. So that's why we were in this wonderful home that took care of all these kids that had lost somebody.
It was a Jewish orphanage.
It was a Jewish,
orphanage.
A Jewish home.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Wasn't it true, though, and whichever one of you guys can answer this, wasn't it true that, in these death camps, concentration camps, whatever you'd like to call it, most of the people that were getting exterminated were women and children. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Yes.
Okay.
And also, well, there were a lot of men too.
Weak men.
Weaker people. The younger, stronger were taken to work camps, and even right in Auschwitz, there was a section where the people that did go to work camp. Her cousin, being 16, that's where even though he was in Auschwitz, he was taken to the work camp, and that's where he met a lot of Americans and English and worked alongside of them, and he survived. Yes.
I do remember what I wanted to say. Years after the war, this particular cousin, he joined an organization to research a lot of what happened to the Jews. And he gave us actually, when he came to the United States to visit us many years ago, and he gave us a book that is that thick and that long, with every name and every person in France that was deported. Wow. And they had convoys, and maybe 1,000, 1,200, 900 in that particular convoy. I mean, they had like 46, maybe 48 convoys.
More than that.
Maybe more. And each convoy has a list of about 1,000 or more that were deported, that particular convoy. And you know how many came back alive out of each 1,000 convoys? Were 26, 21, 18.
Wow.
Out of each convoy.
In the research, there's actually the name, for instance, her mother's name, which was Zisla Fuchs, had her name, where she was born,
yep,
and the date she died. And that information actually came from the German information. They were meticulous, as we found out later on. They were meticulous in taking actual data and recording everything. So in some ways, you know, it was easy to find out all of that information. Of course, you had to gather it, but it was all there.
Oh, the book is so thick with
It's
everybody's name, every single one. And that's just in France. That's not including.
Oh yeah, they have it for everywhere.
Anywhere else.
Yeah,
they have it. So they did keep meticulous records about what they did with all these people. It's unthinkable that one man could have done that.
How did you keep the faith during such a traumatic time? You know, you were in those orphanages for such a long time. You talk about being in one where they treated you well, and going to another one where they made you do a lot more work and didn't treat you as well. You know, there was a war going on. You're not with your family at all, and you're at such a young age. You were talking about, you said 4, anywhere to 4 to 6. I mean, that's got to be extremely scary. I feel like not a lot of people would have that kind of courage to, you know, have faith. So how did you keep faith throughout that time?
I don't think it's faith. I think that when you're a child, I think that you feel what's happening. You may not understand it, you may not know it, but you feel that there is something going on. And as a child, you do what you're told. You go where you're told. You listen to whoever tells you what you should or shouldn't do, or where you go and shouldn't go, because you feel it. But you don't understand it, but it's there. I can't say that, you know, I was lucky. I was saved. What about the people who weren't? I'm a lucky person that this is where I am today. I could have been there. I could have been with my mother. I could have been separated from her and taken to another concentration camp. Her sister and her sister's husband and 2 little girls were taken. They were taken to Bergen-Belsen, and they were also murdered. So I could have been one of those. I am so lucky that I survived it. And after I came to the United States, I mean, you don't get any luckier than I am.
So yeah, can we talk about that journey to America and how that happened from the orphanage?
My uncle that lived in Brooklyn at that time, my father's brother, came to France to see what was happening in France, in Paris. And I don't know that as a fact, but I'm assuming that between the 2 of them, they decided that my uncle in America would take one of us back. My father had applied for a visa to come to the United States, but so did thousands of other people in Europe at that time. They wanted to come to America because this is a safe place to be. So they collaborated between the 2 of them. My sister at that time was in another home because she had gotten pleurisy and she was in like a convalescent home. So they decided that they would take the youngest one because the youngest one would adjust probably better. So this perfect stranger uncle of mine, they came to get me from wherever I happened to be at that time in a home. And they took me and told me that I was going with my Uncle Nathan to America to live with him and his wife. I didn't know any of them, but again, I was told this is what I have to do. So you did it. So we took a train to Le Havre, and from there we took a boat. Still remember the boat, Marine Falcon. That's the name of the boat. Went on that boat with my uncle. Met a few American women. I don't really know what they were doing in France, but they were on the boat. They sort of took me under their wings. And with my uncle, I came to America. Lived with an aunt and uncle for 18 months in Brighton Beach, Brooklyn. And till my father came, and my father and my sister got a visa finally, and then they came about 18 months later. And, once they came, the life was a little tough. My father didn't have a job. We had no place to stay. We couldn't stay with my aunt and uncle because they were, they didn't have a big apartment. So we found a one room where we shared it with my father and my sister and I. It wasn't an easy life, but you know what? I loved being an American. I loved being in America. I adapted to it very quickly because I finally had a place to live. I had a home.
In some ways, I'm also a kind of a survivor of the Holocaust.
Yeah.
But my journey was kind of a very fortunate journey.
Right. Yeah, speak about it.
Joan's parents were born in Poland. My parents were born in Poland. They were about the same age or so, 1909, 1905, somewhere around that time.
Okay.
When life in Poland for Jews was horrible. It was very, especially in the early 1900s and so on. And Jews had a very, very tough time in Poland. There was persecution. There was no opportunities for them. They lived in ghettos. So they had to leave Poland. So her parents went to France. My mother from Warsaw, Poland, went to Belgium. To make a very long story short, there is a long story. My father left a little town called Kalisz, Poland, and also went to Belgium. They didn't know one another, okay? And eventually met in Brussels and got married. But my father was in Brussels illegally, as we call him today, an illegal alien. And he was thrown out of Belgium in 1960. That to them at that time was disaster because they loved living in Belgium. Brussels was a really, what we would say, a swinging city. It was a young couple. It was all the gay city. It was like gay Paris. It was gay Brussels at the same time. And so they didn't want to leave, but they were forced to leave. 1936. Somehow or other, my mother had an aunt in Uruguay, of all places, and the family, my mother and father, migrated to Uruguay. I was born in 1937. The war breaks out in 1939, the invasion of Poland and then Belgium. How lucky was I? How lucky was I that my father and mother thrown out of Belgium because he was illegal and went to Uruguay.
Uruguay.
because those that were left in Belgium, most of them got killed in the concentration camp. They were gathered together also, just like her mother was gathered out of Paris. My family was gathered out of Brussels and sent to, also in convoys, sent to concentration camps. So yes, I talk about luck. Joan survives. She actually lives through the war. I survived. I lived through the war in Uruguay, and it was a, it was peaceful. It was nice. Uruguay was a great country. Eventually, we come to the United States because we tried to find who was left, and there was one aunt and uncle that had made it from France, Belgium, actually. One, yes, that got to the United States. So we came to the United States, and that's how we met.
So Miguel, so if you were in Poland and you were Jewish, you were pretty much dead then. Is that what you're saying?
If they would have stayed in Poland, they was dead.
He wouldn't be here.
No. So, but in Belgium, it was
Same thing.
pretty much the same thing. Some survived out of Belgium. Some were able to get out of Belgium, went into England. Some people were able to escape, but not too many. Not too many.
I want to talk to Joan. One more last question, and then these other questions, they're up for grabs. Whoever wants to take them. All right. So Joan, the thing is, you hear a lot about the Holocaust, World War II in general, and you've talked about it, and so has Miguel, about the horrors of it. In brief, you could go on it probably for hours upon hours. How did you not have any nightmares about any of these situations? Or did you have nightmares, I should ask?
No. Honestly, I never did.
Not even when they took your mother? Nothing?
No, because I did not know
my
mother had been taken. No one. They didn't tell me that she had been taken. They just hit us. So I always thought that, my mother somehow was going to come back. It was a long time before I realized that she wasn't, because also after my father took us to the farm, I never saw him again until maybe a year later when he took us to the other farm.
Wow.
We were not, even if we saw him on the farm, he was there was a really big farm, and we never saw any of the farm workers, including my father. And if we did see him, we were told we cannot call him Papa. We can only call him Louis, because this was not allowed. My father looked very Jewish anyway. So I think that we weren't supposed to talk to him or recognize him or call him Papa. So, I did not see my father. I did not see my mother. But again, as I said before, you don't question.
Yeah. We saw Jewish cemeteries that got graffitied and defaced with swastikas in 2018. We also saw, and it happened in Rhode Island too, we saw murders of Jewish people in the Pittsburgh synagogue in 2018. We saw the Charlottesville protests with the tiki torches saying Jews will not replace us. And now we're seeing discrimination against Asian people due to the coronavirus. Do you believe that this is a tipping point in our society with so many authoritarian figures, not just in this country, but all over the world?
This rise of nationalism that is going around the world is also nationalism only survives or only thrives when there are minorities that they can pick on so that they can boost themselves up with these nationalistic flag waving demonstrations. When you have leaders around the world, including here in the United States, who not only look aside, but encourage not this nationalistic attitude, when also encourage white supremacy here in the United States, when they call out minorities with names, and coronavirus is a perfect example with the Chinese. Before it was only Muslims, and now we include the Chinese. It doesn't matter who it is. You just have to create a minority and put them down so the flag waving groups can feel very proud about themselves. And when you encourage that, it creates this hatred that is awful. And yes, it's a very bad time. It's a horrible time. It's a horrible time that's going on. Hungary is a perfect example. Here's a dictator. Well, he's not. He was elected, but he's now taking over dictatorial powers. And actually going after minorities just to boost up himself, and he has taken over. We have this the danger here in the United States. I mean, if Trump gets elected the next time, that's it. There is dictatorial powers that he's going to exercise to stay in power. It is a very scary thing what's happening here.
You know,
the way he's treating minorities in the United States, it's just awful.
You know, we came to America to get away from the prejudices, to get away from wars. You know, and we're talking, I'm here since 1947. This is why we came to America. And now I'm scared of what is going on. And people should be. But this is why we came here, to feel safe. I don't feel safe anymore. Or I don't feel safe again.
Yeah, here's a very example of what happened. How our thinking is. We travel in an RV, as you know, and we love traveling, and we go to different places. In the fall, and we usually try to go up to Quebec. We love the province of Quebec. You know, it's kind of
France.
It's like, it's a little bit of France. It really is. Quebec City and all the whole province of Quebec. It's really nice. You know that last fall, before we took the trip up to Quebec, we actually talked about this. You know, maybe it's not going to be that safe to come back because of all this anti-migration and that Trump was instituting. I said, you know, yes, our passport says we are United States citizens, but if you look carefully, our passport also says where you were born. And maybe we'll be able to come back, but maybe we're going to have a little tough time.
We didn't.
We actually started thinking that way. That is nothing. I mean, we never felt that way before. No. Why was it all of a sudden I'm thinking that maybe it's not safe for foreigners in the United States? Maybe it isn't safe for us. maybe, you know, this nationalistic feeling is such that, hey, you're a foreigner. I don't care if you were citizen and nationalized, you're a foreigner. And that, to be thinking that way is kind of dangerous.
My last question is, I know you brought this up last time we spoke, Miguel, about the when you were driving around in, I think it was North Florida, you said, when you were down there, he was talking about there was a Christian church that had the Israeli flag. Can you talk about that? You know, we hear all these people that are, you know, they say, oh, Israel, Israel, Israel. And I want you to tell the viewers why they're really saying that they really don't have the love and passion for the state of Israel. It's really a different objective that they have.
Rapture.
Yeah.
Rapture is the thing. Fundamental Christians, and all Christians, believe that there will be a second coming. And in the second coming, come on. In the second coming, we are Israel. Israel will be the place where it will come, and it's got to be protected. The Jews are protecting Israel right now so that the second coming can come. And this is all about this. It's all this fundamentalism that believes so strongly in this rapture, and this is why this alliance all of a sudden, but with the Jewish people, that they are protecting right now. They are protecting Israel, and they're protecting Israel from the infidels, the Muslims, Islam, and protecting the state of Israel for the second coming to occur.
Okay. Go ahead.
Anti-Semitism was here. Anti-Semitism was, all of a sudden, this anti-Semitism that came from the religious right is disappeared because rapture is now the big thing. And Israel is needed. Israelis are needed to protect Israel. Yes, that's.
Thank you for saying that, because a lot of people don't talk about that. And we're going to end the interview here. Joan and Miguel, thanks so much for the time. We definitely got to do this again.